Hello, Art Photography 214 peoples. Here's a video to show you how you can make some changes to your Decisive Moment final image. As you know, we're going to upload one raw image, uncropped, unfiltered, unedited, and then if you want to, you've got the opportunity to make some changes and upload a second PSD or Photoshop file. So if you open up the raw image in Photoshop, here are some things that you could try. Come on over to the left side in the toolbar area and select crop. It's the two little L's that are overlapping. Click on that. And you might find that cropping within reason your image creates a stronger composition. Once you click on that, you can move things around, of course, in any way that you want, keeping in mind those rules of composition that we talked about: leading lines, negative space, asymmetry, all that good stuff. If you click up here, the little no sign, it clears the crop. Another way to crop is to select ratio up here in the top left. And if you type in some numbers, it will give you a preset square or rectangle. Let's say, for example, you want a ratio of 5:4. And that is a very common photographic ratio that fits most standard photo paper sizes, and it's also good for most standard screens. Once you type in the ratio, if you left click and drag corners, it will always stay within that ratio. You could also, instead of typing in ratio low numbers, you could just type in the size of your photo paper. Let's say, for example, we do a photographic assignment where the paper is 16 by 20 or it's 18 by 24. You could type those numbers in, and then you're getting that paper size, that ratio, no matter how you pull the corner. Now, we do want to keep in mind that there are limits to cropping, because the tighter we crop something and the more we zoom in, we might like how it looks, but we're also losing a lot of the information in the file. So, for example, a general rule of thumb is you've got a lot more leeway with a screen, because computer screens and TVs do not have or require as high a resolution to make the image big. But if we were going to print the assignment, cropping out too much information might get you below the resolution needed to print, particularly if it's a big piece of paper. So cropping, for sure we can do it, but we have to keep in mind that if we get rid of too much information, that could be a negative thing for the file and for detail. Now, this image doesn't really, in my opinion, need to be cropped. It just was just a magical kind of moment that happened. And it just, yeah, I don't think I need to get in closer. I don't think it needs a crop change, which is rare, but you're obviously welcome to do that if you want to. The next edit that you might want to try is levels. Image pull down menu, go to adjustments and levels. And then you're going to see some information show up. It's a sort of like graph that shows you where your information is located in your image. Dark information is on the left. Light information is on the right. And if you see that most of the information is distributed, air quote, evenly, you've probably got a pretty good exposure. But if you see gaps, you may want to move those sliders in to enhance the contrast and enhance your value range so the image doesn't look too flat. I'm pretty happy with the exposure on this image. I don't think it needs a big change, but I'm going to amp it up just a little bit, because I know that what I see on the screen might not translate as punchy looking as a print. In the middle, the slider can go to the left to make the image brighter, and the slider can go to the right to darken. I'm going to make it slightly brighter, but not by much. I'm trying to go 1.10. If you can't make the slider work, you can always type in the number and hit tab. So this is a feel thing, this is an experience thing, and the more you change levels, the more you'll become used to it. Say OK when you're done. Third is saturation. It might be that the colors in your image need to be amped up a little bit. If you want to, you can go to Image pull-down menu, Adjustments again, and then choose Hue Saturation. In the middle, you'll see a saturation slider, and this is working on all of the colors generally. You can desaturate colors, removing color, and in some cases, actually, that could make a photograph more cohesive. It might enhance a particular effect. It might also be that going the other way and increasing color saturation could make it more dramatic. Now, the original colors in this image were pretty strong, red and green already, warm versus cool, complementary. So I'm not going to amp them up too much. If we go too high on the saturation, colors can begin to look unnatural and even a little bit freaky. So we want to be aware of that. It could be an effect that you want, but it also might not go with your idea. So just be aware of what the limits could be with saturation for your particular subject or concept. I'm going to dial in +10 just to give it a little bit of oomph, but I don't need much. We'll say OK. Now there's another option you might want to try for edits in your Decisive Moment image. You could change it to black and white. There's no rule that says this has to be color. If you feel black and white suits your concept, your style, if it makes your Decisive Moment stronger, absolutely make it black and white. Try it, see it. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it. We'll go over to the tabs and let's select layers. If you don't see layers, go Window pull-down menu and make sure that there's a check mark beside layers. Then we're going to select this little half circle thing down at the bottom of the layer panel. It's called Create New Fill or Adjustment Layer. Click on it and we're going to select black and white. This is just a default filter for black and white. I'm going to just go with that. And then I'm going to come up to Image pull-down menu mode, and I'm going to go grayscale. And it's going to ask me some questions. I'm going to say flatten, and I'm going to say discard the color. It's OK. And then once that's done, now that it's grayscale, we can check the levels again. Image pull-down menu, Adjustments Levels. It's that same slider that we saw before with the color, but seeing it black and white may give you a very insightful preview on how you may want to amp up certain shadows, or you may want to amp up highlights, or you may want to lighten or darken the overall image. If you feel you need to make levels adjustments in black and white, go ahead, say OK when you're done. Then, to give it a bit of a check, we can see and get a bit of a preview, if you will, to see if it will translate well. Because sometimes what we see with our eyes on a screen might not translate well to print, or it might not look good on all devices, as it were. So one way to kind of give yourself a little bit of a guideline is to go to the Info tab. Info tab. If you don't see it, go Window pull-down menu and make sure there's a little check mark on the Window tab, on the Info tab. Just as a side note, it's very good practice to have all of the Photoshop tabs and functions that you use the most often on the right-hand side. That way they're easier to access and you can work a lot faster. Now, inside this Info tab, if I select the Selection tool, which is just the floating cursor, I can see information on what the percent is for my blacks and whites. Notice in the top left corner of the info panel is K. K in CMYK world stands for, you guessed it, black. So if I go into some of the shadow areas of my image, I know and I remember that this was the darkest part, this was the shadow area. So I'm hovering over top and my K is 99%. I'm even getting, in some cases, maybe, 100%, but in a very small area. So if you've got 90% and up, chances are that's going to be a full black if you were to print it on paper. But by hovering over the cursor, it just lets us know that, yeah, okay, my darks are solid. This image isn't going to look too grayish because we want those shadows to be dark and deep. We want the contrast to be full. It makes the image much more powerful. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we can move the cursor around to the light areas of our image and just make sure that it is light. I can see my K values here on the white wall are very, very low. If you've got something 10% and under, that's going to read as a pure white, particularly if you print it. So I'm happy with my highlights. And my subject also has highlights in certain areas, and those little droplets of sweat, I want them to stand out. That's part of what makes the image so emotionally intense, is the sharpness of the facial expression versus the slight blur of the action of the moment. And I'm happy with my highlights. They're on the very, very light side. Now there's one other possibility for your image. And that's using the clone tool. Over here on the left-hand side in the toolbar, there's a little thing that looks like a rubber stamp, or it's called the clone tool. And it could be that for this assignment, maybe you've got like a subject, or maybe there's something really annoying to you that you just don't want in the image, and you just think your decisive moment shot would be stronger without it. You're allowed to delete, you're allowed to edit a little bit within reason. Now, I don't know that this is a big deal for the image, but here's a little bit of a speaker in the top portion of the image. And let's just say for hypothetical purposes, I didn't like it. Actually, I personally don't really care about it, but let's say I wanted to get rid of it. One possibility is I can take the clone stamp, I can change the brush size up here at the top, and then if I hit Option on the keyboard, and we've done this with the pinhole image already, click in a target, and I could paint from that target area and it copies. And I could get rid or try to minimize or delete a particular area. Now the clone stamp works really well with small, tiny little persnickety details. If you want to do something larger, you'll probably have to be a lot more subtle about it. And so you can see here that my clone stamp looks a little bit chunky. So another possibility is to treat the area in a broader kind of way. So I'm taking the selection tool, that's the third tool down from the top in the toolbar area, and let's see if this will work. How about I just go much more general and subtle? So I could select an area, get the marching ants, and then if you go up to this area right here at the top, it says select and mask. Click on that. And then you've got an option to feather, which is down here. And with a red mask, color red showing, I can see that right now my selection is super sharp. And if I did my clone tool, I'd probably see a sharp line. So I could feather it, make the edges much more gradual. In this case, I'll go 30, and you can put it to whatever you want, but you can see now the edge is much more subtle, much more feathered, much more gradual. Say, okay. And now I could take my brush, I could use the clone tool and try that and do it again, Or I could try my brush. Maybe if I took this area here, I selected the ink dropper tool right here, and it samples color and it puts it in your paintbrush. So I've copied that color. And then I could go to my paintbrush and I could make the paintbrush small or large, dialing in the size up here at the top. And then I could paint in that area. And because the feathering was so gradual, it's very, very subtle. Command D gets rid of marching ants. So it is possible to use the clone tool to get rid of a particular thing and make it look natural. So those are some options. There are so many more things we could do to enhance your image. These are a few popular ones: cropping, levels, saturation, changing your image to black and white and enhancing through levels again, and then the clone tool.